right, it works. I think we're ready. The house is kind of full, so yeah, let's get this started. Thank you everyone for coming. And welcome to the second Boston Life Science Showcase. This is a quarterly event that we host every quarter to get everyone in the ecosystem in Boston within the life sciences and healthcare space together for us to firstly celebrate, but also create new connections that would help advance the ecosystem together forward. So my name is, to begin, I want to introduce myself first. My name is Jensen Vu. For my daytime job, I'm a principal at Republic. We are an equity crowdfunding platform and a venture capital fund as well in the fintech and Web3 space. But tonight, I'm wearing the hat as one of the co-organizers of the event, alongside my friend here, Jason Krause, who I'm proud to introduce as firstly my friend, but also operating partner of Boston New Technology and the founder and CEO of Prepare for VC. Jason, really nice to be here with you today.
Great to be here with you as well. And yeah, appreciate all of your work and all of your team's work getting the event organized and up and running tonight, and really excited about all the amazing speakers and panelists and startups that are pitching, as well as all the incredible attendees that are coming out as well and supporting all of our ventures. And kind of the format of tonight is going to be, there'll be there'll be 4 startups presenting with a break in the middle, where we're going to have a panel focused on fundraising and during a difficult economic environment with our panel of experts. And yeah, so during each pitch, you know, we're going to have, they're going to be slide presentations, and you're going to get to see a little bit behind the scenes of each of the startups that are being built. They're at different stages of scale and growth as well. And we're going to have time for audience questions to, you know, to learn a little bit more about their ventures and then be able to connect with them afterwards as well. So yeah, we encourage, you know, this to be as open as possible, you know, get any of your questions answered and get to know each of the companies that are coming out and presenting. And yeah, really excited to turn it back to you to introduce our tonight's speakers as well.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming, and also especially to the experts who are here tonight. I know that you're super busy, and yeah, all of you spending your evening with us is incredible. And some of you are returners to this event as well, which really shows the trust and faith in this event and the connections we made. So we really appreciate it. So with that, I am proud to introduce our speakers for tonight, our panel experts who will be questioning the teams and will also be helping us give some tips with regards to fundraising in this market as well. First, thank you so much, Michael Singer, for coming to the event, returning, and always be a mentor to all the startups in the ecosystem here as well. Michael is the chairman and chief strategy officer at Cartesian Therapeutics, and also a principal at Thirsty Brook Investment as well. He is a renowned VC and PE investors, has sold his 2 biotech companies to big pharmaceutical companies, and I don't even have time to list all his achievements, but thank you so much with that resume, still spending your time to be with us today. Thank you, Michael. Next, thank you so much for David Ufer for being here with us today. David is the Vice President of MedTech Commercial Development at General Inception, and who was also a former senior partner at Alira Health. And David was so willing to kind of accept the offer to be here without knowing much about the event. So thank you so much for coming and for kind of having your trust in all the teams being here. We appreciate the time. Next up, we also have Kate McLaughlin, who is the head of global science strategy at Millipore Sigma. Thank you, Kate. Kate was also a panelist during the last event and who was graciously accepted to come back and offer her expertise during this panel as well. So thank you so much, Kate. And Matt, I just see Matt here. Matt is a longtime supporter of everything that we do at VietChallenge, but also of Boston Life Sciences showcase as well. And Matt later will be giving some tips with regard to patent protections and IPs within the space, as he is the partner and chair of life sciences transactions and licensing at Morrison Forster, one of the supporters of the event. So thank you, Matt. And last but not least, Curdy Levy as well, who is the managing director of Techstars. Thank you so much, Curdy, for being here. I don't know where you're in the house. Oh, you're right here. Okay, I'm sorry. I just like scanning everywhere. But thank you so much for spending your time being here and also for referring some of the incredible teams who are presenting here tonight as well. Thank you so much. So that's all of the panelists that we have today. Obviously, we have a house stacked with experts in the space, but please don't let that limit you from having conversations, making new connections, and just enjoy this space as well. It's not supposed to be super formal. It's supposed to be a new space for fun and connection. So yeah, let's get this started.
Cool. And yeah, so this is a collaboration event. We came together the end of last year and created the Boston Life Science Showcase between Boston New Technology and VietChallenge. What Boston New Technology is it's an organization about 11 years old at this point, and really started with the mission of helping startups get out and showcase their companies to the early stage tech and general tech and life science community, being able to get feedback as early as possible, build those connections with anyone that could be a potential team member, investor, partner, customer, just supporter, and be able to help each other out in the community. And yeah, we came in, my other companies prepare for VC that help startups through the early stage fundraising and growth process. And we came in as a co-organizer of Boston New Technology about a year and a half ago to really kickstart and build back the momentum of the amazing group after the pandemic. And, we've had a lot of interest and exciting events this last year, and excited to continue the momentum from here. And yeah, as Jensen mentioned, we're doing these at least quarterly in terms of the life science showcase side. And yeah, with that, excited to welcome who's the founder of VietChallenge, to give some welcoming words as well. And yeah, it's been great working with her this past year and her amazing team. So yeah, excited to have you introduced.
Yep. Thank you so much, Jason. My name is Mai Zamaritz. My day job is an attorney. I actually work for VietChallenge at Morrison and Forster, but my fun job is the founder and president of VietChallenge, and we are a 7 years old nonprofit organization. And what we do is we empower diverse entrepreneurs and empower new technologies. And we really glad that we had the opportunity to collaborate with Jason and his great team at Boston New Technology, and bringing together these great events, networking, showcasing events, so that we can see the innovations in life sciences in Boston and beyond. Really want to thank all our distinguished guests, on the teams, on the audience today. But I also want to single out a member of our team, Jen Dow, who has been working tirelessly to put the program together. So please join me in a round of applause for Jen. Thank you.
Amazing. And yeah, I want to thank Tufts as well for hosting us tonight. And also all of our startups that are going to be pitching and presenting, including Omni Labs, Rocket VR, My Biometry, and Piction Health. And you're going to get to hear from each of them in their presentations tonight. And then, yeah, I'll turn it over to Jensen to introduce our first guest remarks as well.
Of course. And yeah, in case you've missed it in the countless emails that we send or the huge sign outside the door, we're at Tufts University. And we're here thanks to the generosity and support of Tufts, and especially from Professor Kevin Oy, who has been just an incredible person who has introduced me to so many and helped work with and could advise so many important people in my life, Jean, Laura, but yeah, countless people who have really been instrumental in the ecosystem in Boston. Kevin is the executive director of Tufts Gordon Institute and the director of the Master in Science in Innovation and Management program. He's a prominent figure in the Boston startup community. bridging the gaps between innovation and expertise in academia and also the demands in private industries through the program that he's built, the Master of Science in Innovation and Management program. Let's also not forget that Kevin is also a steadfast supporter of the Boston Life Sciences Showcase, and he's been there since the very first beginning meeting when we started putting this together. So we're absolutely delighted to have him here, to have top support, and would love for you to come and give us some remarks to welcome you into the space. Thank you so much.
So welcome to Tufts. How many people is the first time you've been to Tufts? Okay, great. Now, so Tufts, how many people are investors? Hi, Michael. He's an investor in multiple Tufts companies. How many people here are startups themselves? Startup people, okay, good, good. And how many of you are students? Cool, cool, great mix, great mix. So Tufts University, for those of you who are not aware, is actually one of 146 R1 Rockefeller Research Universities. So if you think about all the universities in the world, we're one of 146. We've also are one of the 64 American Association of American Universities. So these are even more elite research universities that are invitation only. So you would think though that with us being in those leagues, you've never heard of us, right? Because if you look at it, I call it the Goldilocks University. We're not so big that things are siloed, but we're not so small that we don't have critical mass. We're just right. And the interesting thing is, if you look at absolute research dollars, yes, we're in the R1, we're in the AAU, but we're on the lower end of the spectrum in terms of total invested research dollars. But if you look at the ratio of startups to research dollars, licensing revenue to research dollars, you actually find that our ratios put us in the top part of that curve, slightly above University of Chicago, well above Johns Hopkins, who's #1 in research funding at $3 billion. With 1/10 of funding, we actually put out more startups, more patents per research dollar. So go Tufts, because technically we have a medical school, we have a dental school, but we also have a vet school. We have a school of nutrition, we have a school of biological sciences, and we have a very strong school of engineering, which Michael Singer knows about because we've actually launched several startups out of that in the life science area. So I welcome you all to Tufts. I welcome you all to engage with anyone at Tufts. And if you ever need a point of contact at Tufts to try and figure out what's going on here, please feel free to use me. I'd be more than happy. Kevin.oye@tufts.edu. So welcome.
Amazing. Yeah, always appreciate Kevin's great support on all of our events, and yeah, excited to be here at Tufts tonight. And really excited to welcome our first speaker from MoFo as well, Matt Carlin, who's the head of one of the co-chairs of the Life Science Division. And he's going to be talking about tips on patent protection and licensing tonight. So yeah, excited to have you aboard.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody. My Zamaris, who I work with, she said that she works for me. For clarity, I definitely work for her. But she's given me, I think, 6 minutes to talk about everything I know about intellectual property and how to protect your intellectual property assets. So like Mai said, Matt Carlin, I'm a partner in Morrison & Foerster's Boston office. I run our life science transactions and licensing practice, which is a group of lawyers in the United States. We have about 15 folks. We have a team on the ground in Berlin and a group in Tokyo and Shanghai. We represent companies in their commercial life sciences endeavors. So what that means is anything from small kind of run-of-the-mill transactions in the life sciences space, all the way up through some of the bigger collaborations that our clients do in the pharma space and healthcare and what we call med tech, which encompasses med device, any digital assets, telemedicine, digital health, things like that. So today I thought I'd give you a little primer on 3 of the kind of critical areas that when we advise startup companies, which we regularly and routinely do, some of the three kind of basic things that we watch out for. We represent investors as well. So some of the things that investors watch out for when they do diligence on startup companies. Number 1, big mistake, and I think Ma, you asked me to talk about the big mistakes that companies make. First big mistake is companies fail to obtain good title to intellectual property. This happens all the time. How do we protect the intellectual property assets of a company? The primary way that we do this is through what we call a proprietary information and inventions agreement. What we want to protect are all of the assets that a company has. Intellectual property vests in a company, not in individuals. And so when you're creating something, what we want to protect and what we want to make sure of is that all of the people, all of the inventors, all of the people that are contributing knowledge to the company assign that intellectual property to the company. We do that via an agreement. There's some other mechanisms that we can employ, but ultimately we want to protect those assets. There's some carve-outs that you're probably familiar with. I keep thinking that you're looking at a presentation and you're not, so I apologize for that. I've got it in front of me. Under the California Labor Code, is one of the more restrictive labor codes in the country. There are some carve-outs that we commonly account for in those types of agreements. So what are those? If an employee develops something on their own time, if an employee develops something using their own assets, their computers, okay? If an employee invents something outside of the company, the barriers of the company's office, the company's organization, whatever that is, if the invention doesn't result from any investment the employee has made in the company itself, those things can be carved out, and those things the employee themselves can retain ownership of those items. And what we'll do is we'll schedule those things in the proprietary information and inventions agreement to make it crystal clear that those particular assets are carved out, but everything else that the employee creates in their capacity as an employee of the company is vests in the company itself. Okay, investors are going to be super interested in those agreements because what they want to make sure of is that chain of title to those intellectual property assets is maintained in the company. Key critical mistake that startup companies routinely make. Number two, failing to properly license technology protected by others. Okay, you can't just use intellectual property. Typically, intellectual property belongs to other folks, other companies, other people, other inventors. Those assets have to be licensed into the company. Now, how do we do that? We do that via a license agreement. So for those of you who might have companies that are coming out of a university like Tufts University, Tufts is going to be super interested in licensing the intellectual property that was conceived here into the company. Okay, you're going to do that via a license agreement with Tufts University. There's going to be lots of bells and whistles to that. They're going to have a lot of requirements with respect to things that you have to do in order to maintain that license. There's going to be diligence requirements. There's going to be milestones. There's going to be payments. They might take an equity stake in the company or desire an equity stake in the company. There's going to be a whole lot of things that you have to do and accomplish in order for that intellectual property to make its way from Tufts into your company. Okay, investors are going to be super interested in those agreements. And I can promise you they are frequently done incorrectly. And when we represent investors and we do diligence on companies, there's all sorts of red flags that arise in those types of agreements. There's all sorts of things that there are errors, there are problems with chain of title, there's problems with inventorship, there's all sorts of problems that we identify that startups kind of run afoul with when they rush through that process. So that's number two, failing to properly license technology protected by others. And then number three is failing to properly protect trade secrets. So does everyone know what a trade secret is? So a trade secret has a bunch of different qualities, but generally it's confidential business information. It's the stuff that you don't want other companies to know or other people to know. The common example is like, for example, the formula for Coca-Cola. That's a trade secret of Coca-Cola. It's not published anywhere. It's not patented. You can't go look it up somewhere. It's in some vault. Very few people have access to it, and it's not released anywhere. So couple confidential business information with limited availability, like in the Coca-Cola example, with some economic value that's derived by the company. So typically a trade secret information will have some economic value that's derived from the company. And reasonable precautions that are implemented in order to maintain the secrecy of the trade secret. Couple all those things together, and you have what's called a trade secret. Trade secret leakage is a huge, huge problem for startup companies. Why? Because lots of times founders of startup companies come to events like this and they start talking to people like me. And we then take that information and we share it with other companies and competitors and other clients. Okay, you don't want to do that. You want to avoid that. So internally, having a process to understand, number one, what is a trade secret? What are the trade secrets of the company? Can we just start there? Does the company have trade secrets? You probably do. How are we protecting them? How are we preventing that leakage? Do we have policies in place and training in place with respect to our employees, even if we're 2 or 3 or 4 employees? Do we have a system in place to protect those trade secrets? Do we have non-disclosure agreements in place? In the event of trade secret leakage, is there some remedy that the company has against the person who disclosed the trade secret? Things like that. Okay, so be careful also. Startup companies go through lots of changes. People come, people go. Okay, trade secret leakage often happens with departing employees. So how do we prevent that? Limit access to trade secrets. Okay, understand also if you have a patentable invention, so when you patent something, we're not going to get into that today, but when you patent something, what happens? That invention becomes, for the most part, public. So somebody can go, it gets published. You can go look up the patent at the Patent and Trademark Office, and you can see all the claims, and you can essentially take what somebody else has done and replicate it. Well, you can do that, but if you did that, you'd be infringing upon that patent. With trade secrets, those are the private information of the company. That being said, if you have a trade secret, you can often protect an invention up to the date of publication, notwithstanding the fact that you haven't patented that particular invention to which the trade secret applies. So keep that in mind. Trade secrets are super, super, super valuable and extraordinarily important for the company. Have a policy in place, maintain that policy, train your employees with respect to what leakage means, and protect your trade secrets. Those are the 3 that I came up with for today. Questions that I can answer for anybody? Anything you're dying to know? Yeah.
I had a question on, AI, right?
Oh gosh, everybody has a question on AI.
Right. I mean,
How did this become an AI
when
presentation?
you run a tech company and technology is changing so rapidly,
Yeah.
and what you're doing yesterday can be made obsolete in a matter of like weeks, if not months. How do you kind of design an IP strategy that can take that into account? I mean, yeah.
How do you design a strategy, an IP strategy, given the constantly evolving world? That's a great question. It's one that I don't have time to talk about today, truthfully, and all kidding aside. I guess what I'll leave you with on that note is, and you're not going to like this answer, is you can't. You have to drive forward with the idea you have. That's my advice. Okay, we can't, from a patent strategy perspective, constantly predicting what the next company is going to do. And AI is throwing a huge kink in everybody's strategy. There's no question about that. Particularly with respect to the application of artificial intelligence to the life sciences, with respect to drug development, with respect to digital health and telemedicine. It's throwing a massive kink into what everybody's doing. My advice, just one person's advice, is to keep your eye on the ball and just keep doing what your strategy is, and hope that you beat the next player. Yeah.
So I'm an eye doctor, and a company gave me free contact lenses for a year to help them develop
stark problem.
lens that prevents prescriptions from going up. So during that year, I developed 3 other contact lenses. Can I patent those other contact lenses myself?
Oh my God, my.
Sorry, really specific.
Do your contact lenses, did you develop them in any way using the free contact lenses that you were provided? I mean, did you?
Yes.
I mean,
So
don't tell me too much here, and be careful what you say.
So I gave them the parameters, and they manufactured them for me. And they were testing just large diameter contact lenses, and I started playing around with like multifocals, and they were just trying to treat nearsightedness, and I managed to find something for farsightedness and like presbyopia.
Are their contact lenses patented?
They aren't. They
They're
haven't
not.
patented their lens.
And they gave them to you for free.
They did to try out on patients.
And you developed an improved contact lens.
Multiple improved contact lenses.
Can you patent those?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we can talk offline, but I mean, based on the fact pattern you're telling me, I don't see a reason why you wouldn't be able to, so long as there's not prior art that would prevent you in any case from patenting those inventions. I mean, ultimately, your suggestion perhaps is that by having access to somebody else's contact lens and then thereby creating another contact lens, that access would somehow prevent you from patenting your invention.
Yeah.
But
so-
not really, right? Because are those contact lenses that you were given on the market?
No, they weren't. And I specified all the parameters, like, because each of them are custom made to the specific patient. So I basically just set them the parameters. And when it didn't work, they had to fix their lens algorithm. And it took like 9 iterations.
I think we probably need some more facts.
Okay.
Yeah. But good invention. Yeah.
Can you just comment a little bit strategically about software and copyright and other strategies around protecting software? Obviously, AI gets, but just high level.
Yeah. So software is not entirely my area, but it's, over the years, we have advised fewer and fewer companies on patenting software. There's no question about that. What was the question specifically?
Are there other copyright other strategies to
Besides patenting it?
besides patenting? I don't think patenting is a good software strategy.
In terms of protecting the intellectual property?
Yeah, and just anything related to, I mean, the IP on hardware is pretty straightforward, right?
Mhm.
But just other strategies that might not be obvious for software.
Besides
Besides keeping it a
patenting?
trade secret. Yeah, exactly.
And keep it a trade secret, but once you start selling it, you're going to lose that. So years ago, when I first started, I was in software and we used to do a ton of people with patent software all the time. We advise fewer and fewer companies these days with respect to patenting software. There's no question about that. Can I think of another way to protect it? In the intellectual property universe, probably not. Because if you maintained it as a trade secret, then, I mean, the minute you sell it, it can be reverse engineered and whatnot. So I'm not sure that's a great strategy, but patenting used to be, the way it was done. The Patent and Trademark Office has become super, 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 persnickety about patenting software. With one exception being in digital health and telemedicine. That seems to be an area that there's still a lot of growth. But that's my world. So I don't know from a general software perspective if that's true.
That's my world too.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Am I done?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Matt. As much as I would love to put a JD after my name now, I can't. So if you have any more questions or more things that you will need legal guidance on, obviously Mai and Matt will be here and be around. So yeah, please do reach out. Besides that, I want to transition naturally into Brian and yeah, introduce you to the stage. And I'm sure you'll hear more about why we talked about software just now when Brian talks about My Biometry, which is a startup that is a software platform to remotely monitor and manage patients with chronic conditions. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
It's more hardware than that.
Oh, well, please, enlighten us and get started. So here goes.
Right.
Thank you so much.
So let's see if I can do this and see where we are. Perfect. Good evening. I'm Brian Nolan. I'm the founder and CEO of My Biometry. We are in the asthma management business. We are developing a diagnostic technology. It's a breath test. It helps identify patients who are at risk of having an asthma attack up to 20 days in advance. That data is actionable, and then we use it to drive proactive interventions to help patients actually prevent it from happening. This is something that is very near and dear to us as a team. This is Christy. She's our director of quality. She has 2 beautiful little girls, and they both have asthma. Most of the time they're fine, but it deteriorates very rapidly. And when that happens, they have an asthma attack and they're suffocating. And as a parent, watching your child struggle to breathe, it's absolutely terrifying. And as a patient, going through that feeling of suffocation is not something that you ever want to go through a second time if you've had it happen to you. Unfortunately, it happens way too much. There's 25 million asthma patients. Most of them are uncontrolled. Most of the uncontrolled patients have an asthma attack. And that leads to about $21 billion in preventable medical expenses. These attacks don't have to happen. You can prevent them. The way that asthma is managed today, most patients get two types of medications. You get a rescue medication and a controller medication. A rescue medication does exactly what you think it does. It opens up your airways if you're having an attack. Having too much of it is a bad thing. The other medication, the controller medication, is an anti-inflammatory. It's usually an inhaled corticosteroid. It's designed to prevent attacks. The problem with the disease in general is that patients take the controller medication, and most of them, you can see almost 70%, self-adjust based on how they feel. And what they are feeling are their symptoms. And the problem is that symptoms tend to change about 2 to 3 days before you have an asthma attack. So you can see from the graph there, you basically fall right off a cliff. The medications that they're self-adjusting take up to 2 weeks to have a full therapeutic effect. So patients aren't catching this early enough that the medications are being used appropriately. So we're building a solution that's built around a biomarker. The biomarker is called FeNO. It's part of both the US and the global asthma guidelines. It is predictive of therapeutic response and prognostic of exacerbations. We have a very unique way to measure this biomarker. It's a sensor technology. The innovation here is really the sensor chemistry and the manufacturing process, because we make these like diabetes test strips. So high volume, low cost sensors, they're single use, disposable. They pair with a simple device that's connected, and that enables us to measure this biomarker every single day at home. And the reason that that's important is it starts to change up to 20 days before you have symptoms. So this is data on the graph here. This is an AstraZeneca phase 2 study, basically showing that if the biomarker doubles within that 20-day window, it corresponds to a 287% increased risk. What's very unique about asthma, unlike other chronic diseases, is the interventions here don't require major lifestyle changes. These are simple adjustments to therapy. If you're not taking your medication, start taking it. If it doesn't make the biomarker go down, you can take extra puffs of it. If that's not effective, you can go see your doctor and they can switch the medicine to something that will drive down the inflammation. So much simpler interventions that happen in a much faster timeline. So our technology is sort of a step function over what exists today. It really boils down to the sensor itself. Because the sensor is inexpensive and disposable, it makes the whole system easier to use. The competitive technologies actually require patients who don't have asthma to breathe into the device every single day to quality control it. So an asthma patient uses it and a patient without asthma has to use it. We eliminate that with the disposable sensor. We're actually more accurate at higher concentrations, and that correlates to higher risk patients. This is some of our clinical data on the right here. We're comparing to gold standard, which is the chemiluminescence analyzer. So the left graph there on the y-axis, that's us. The gold standards on the x-axis, and you can see we strongly correlate everything above 50 is a higher risk patient. The competitive product on the right there starts to spray. So they're getting less accurate at exactly the patient population you don't want to lose accuracy in. And we've protected it. We have 12 issued patents. All of them are still pending, so this is going to grow. Very interested to learn about some software protection in the future. And this is why we're interested in that piece of it. So we wrap a digital solution around the diagnostic data. So risk of attack, so the biomarker, there's clear guidelines of how to interpret it. So we can interpret it in real time for patients and provide feedback to them and what they can do about it. We've got algorithms that help patients learn what is triggering their asthma, and then we warn them when that trigger is in the forecast. So think of this like if there's a ragweed in the forecast on Friday, we can start reminding you on Monday to take your medication. We have a partnership with the American Lung Association. This is an exclusive licensing arrangement where we are digitizing all of their evidence-based content for asthma self-management and incorporating that into the app. And then that also expands to their care team. So access to their care team available in the app. We have two primary markets, point of care market, which also includes the pharmacy and the home market. Both markets have reimbursement and CPT codes in place. The point of care market, there's a reimbursement code specifically for the breath test. It reimburses about $21 per test. And then the market driver, the use case here is for diagnosis and therapeutic monitoring at the retail pharmacy or the physician's office. So number of prescriptions and number of office visits for asthma. Home market, there's a remote patient monitoring code, CPT code. Pays about $64 a month. And for us, this is bundling the sensor, the device, and all of the digital solution around it. Target patient population there is anybody with uncontrolled asthma. So we're going to be the first company to do the home monitoring. Competitors cannot do this because the cost of their product doesn't even fit into the reimbursement structure. Their hardware is thousands of dollars, and they would only get about 768 in the first year. Here we are selling directly to payers. So that is the customer. It's provided to the patients for free as a covered benefit. We're starting with a pilot with a local insurance company, Point 32 Health. It's about a 300 person pilot that's scheduled starting towards the end of the year, although they've got some challenges with a security breach that they're working through right now, if you guys have read the paper. And then the ROI and the opportunity here is asthma attack prevention saves them about $4,500 per attack prevented. So this is the team that we've assembled. They're very complementary to my skill set, which is mostly sales and marketing. The rest of the team is really focused on the product development. So my background, sales and marketing at J&J. For over 20 years. Devin Campbell ran product development at a company called Ventana, which ultimately Roche acquired. Anmal, who's here, built and sold a software company in the structured content management space. Mark on the bottom left there is the co-inventor on about 90 patents from a company called TheraSense. This is for continuous glucose monitoring and test strips. Abbott ultimately bought that company and turned it into Abbott Diabetes. And then Christy, who's our teammate who's got the two little girls, she's doing quality for us, and she's had a number of roles like that at WholeLogic and other big med tech companies. And then Tom is the co-inventor of our technology, and his company's not up there because that's a trade secret. So if anybody in the crowd is interested, these are three ways that you can get involved with us. We're looking for payer and provider partnerships, whether that's you or a connection that you might have, any commercial partnerships, and then investment. So I'll leave it open for Q&A.
I saw you have also the software and also app attached to the sensor.
Yes, on the phone.
Okay, and then the app, does that collect the personal information?
Yes.
Okay.
So it collects the biomarker data. It collects your symptoms, your asthma control, based on geolocation, about 60 some environmental parameters based on what you're exposed to. The device also pulls some indoor environmental parameters. So that's how we identify the things. From a trigger perspective, we can see what the triggers are present, and we can see what your biological response is, and it's self-labeled with an asthma control test, which is a clinically validated outcome.
And also personal information, right? Name, age, sex,
Yep.
demographic.
Intake form to get the basic demographics that we would want to understand risk.
So what's your strategy going into the other market, European market in China?
Our strategy is to start in the U.S. and partner for the other markets. It requires a hardware change, or not a hardware change, a software change to translate into all the other languages. Very different regulatory landscape. We're a startup. We can't do all of that at the same time. So one market at a time for us, starting here.
But you do receptible to the
IP is filed globally.
Thank you.
Sure.
So it works off a cell phone. Is it? I've always wondered, is it cleared like on one specific phone, or is it on one type of phone, or is it cleared on?
Cleared by app. So Android, iOS, you limit the number of apps or number of software versions in phones in which you can use it. It's as much a maintenance question, but software maintenance as it is a regulatory one. Go ahead.
Are there other inflammation related illnesses that you think this could be helpful in predicting or getting in front of?
So as of yesterday, COPD. I was in Washington at the American Thoracic Society. The pharma companies are starting to release their COPD data, looking at stratified patient populations with elevated type 2 inflammation. So Sanofi, just Dupixent, which I'm sure you guys have seen the ads for, just released their phase 3 data for one of the 2 studies. So it was, I think that's the next place for it. Also allergic rhinitis and other allergic related diseases. People have studied it, but I don't know that we're going to go there.
What real world data did you collect?
I'm sorry, say what real
How much
world?
real world data did you collect so far regarding the asthma attack versus using your?
I'm sorry, real world data, asthma.
Yeah, how much you actually decreased the asthma attack by using your?
Yeah, so the product's not cleared yet. The pilot from point 32 will be the first real world data that we have. The literature on some of the things that we're combining into here suggests that we should be able to get about a 50% reduction in ER visits and hospitalizations. It's just from the American Lung Association data itself, and then other published data on biomarker, using the biomarker to drive clinical decisions, but we will need to generate our own data on that. At the point of care, we just need to prove that we can measure the biomarker, and then we can sell into the point of care. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like you size the potential beneficiaries of this at 15.5 million individuals with uncontrolled asthma. So how do you define uncontrolled? Like I'm thinking in terms of diabetes, and sometimes that's, by choice, individuals just blowing off treatment for some time. Is that the case here, or is that, what do you?
So as asthma, you cycle through levels of asthma control, as you can imagine, based on, what's going on in your life, whether you're compliant to your medications, whether you're exposed to things that trigger your asthma. It's usually defined by number of frequency of symptoms, intensity of symptoms, elevated biomarker levels, and lung function. So there's clinical definitions of it as well.
Sorry about that. What's your going market strategy? Is that 510K?
It's a 510K class 2.
So class 2 with the device also bundle is that?
Yeah, so on the app side, the only so it's built as a regulated medical product, software as a medical device, the whole stack is, but the only part that technically has to be regulated is the module that powers the device. The other one is a choice, but architecturally you can't go backwards. So we just architected it from the get-go. Yeah, go ahead.
So strategically it's clear that you guys are going through payers first, because that's where the immediate value demonstration is. What's the role of the provider in the equation in generating data actually initially, right? And how does that fit into the puzzle?
Yeah, so the provider one's an interesting question just from a big picture market, because really Medicare Advantage is the only one where they kind of are incentivized to do remote patient monitoring. So there's a little bit of a business question there. What we are doing specifically with providers and payers is push-pull. So for example, we've got Point 32 Health locally, but we also have 2 provider organizations locally that are going to participate. We're talking to South Coast as a health system, and they're also going to bring in their payer into that mix. We're a finalist at Cedars-Sinai for their accelerator program at the pediatric hospital. So that's a provider-focused organization. Then we'll go to Kaiser and all the insurance companies if we get into that. So it's really early on push-pull, both of them, because we want to generate the data. With the other thing that's important, obviously, is you can't go to the insurance company, put somebody on a program, and then not tell the doctor about it. Right. So there'll be an outbound communication to the physicians to inform them of what we're doing and who, you've got patients on the program, et cetera. So with Point 32, that's part of the plan, is anybody that enrolls, the physician also gets notified that they're doing it. Yeah.
So you said you're currently in phase 2 trials?
No, so the data, we don't need a phase approach for trials. So we are just 510K class 2. It's a method comparison, literally correlating. Does it work? And, blow into this device, blow into that device, and correlate the 2 together. That was data from an AstraZeneca phase 2 pharma study. that looked at the biomarker. A lot of the pharma companies have been carrying the biomarker through phase 2, 3, and post-market trials because of just how their drugs work. So stratifying patients and looking at inflammatory response of the medication.
So with that, like, what is the regulatory hurdles, I guess, in sort of having this go to market? Is there some sort of like regulatory strategy that needs to be implemented before be commercially available?
Yeah, so it needs to be cleared first. So the strategy that we've laid out is path of least resistance. So the first clearance is a 510K class 2 for point of care use. That, based on what FDA has told us this far, and we'll get this clarified in an upcoming pre-sub, that will also be our predicate to go to home. So it'll be done jointly, but we'll kind of bounce one off of them. And then we've got a data strategy and an algorithm strategy that is down the road, but we need to be aware of it now because we just have to build things compliantly. Whether we choose to implement that or go to FDA with it is sort of to be determined. So it's a two-step process, but path of least resistance. So the first claim set will match the competitors exactly, and then we'll expand from there.
And have you guys looked into combining it with other wearable devices like heart rate variability monitors to see if it could help you correlate that with early detection?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting other physiological parameters that would be helpful. But again, we're a startup; we can't do it all at the same time. So one thing at a time.
We have room for 2 more questions. Any questions from our panelists? Yes, Kate.
It's a really impressive plan and data. It seems like it's most valuable to both payers as well as patients as long as the compliance is high, though. And you mentioned compliance with medication is not always high.
Yep.
So what's your plan to drive engagement and utilization?
Sure. So I'll start with sort of the first piece of the question. So interestingly enough, in asthma, patients are fairly compliant tracking themselves, but definitely less compliant actually taking the medication. And it's not that they don't take it, they just do it incorrectly. It's the wrong medication at the wrong time for the wrong reasons, essentially. So when their asthma symptoms get worse, they take their rescue inhaler and they don't increase the dose of their inhaled steroid. So part of it is they're compliant, but they're just doing it wrong. That being said, obviously getting people to do anything is complicated and difficult. So we connected, so part of it's automated, part of it's brute force. So the app is connected to a customer service platform where we can automate outreach and we can track whether people are doing things or not. We're tracking whether tests are done correctly, and we can outreach immediately if tests aren't being done correctly. You can also do communication, so chatbot function and also phone calls. So the brute force is when people aren't compliant, you need them to. If you actually put a nurse or somebody behind the scenes doing the outreach, we know in sleep apnea, you can get that up to about 80% for CPAP therapy. And with that combination of automate as much as you can, but you might have to brute force it a little bit with a human.
Right. I'll take the last question if that's okay. I know you mentioned that your kind of other ways to join and help is through investment as well. So could you help us enlighten us into kind of the round that you're raising and what the use of fund is for, what the next big milestone is for the company?
So it's a $3.5 million round. We've done a little over $2.5 million of it already. So we're just trying to top it off at this point in time. Use of funds are pretty straightforward. We need to get our 510K clearance. So finishing the device and doing that submission, and then getting into the pilot with the insurance company.
Awesome. Sounds great. Thank you so much. Jason, you want to introduce the next speaker? Sure. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Yeah, great job, Brian. And yeah, really exciting presentation on my biometry, and excited to introduce our next speaker, Susan Conover from Piction Health. So yeah, it'll be the same format with the 5-minute presentation and 10 minutes of Q&A.
Hi guys, I'm Susan Conover, co-founder and CEO of Piction Health, and we're building the largest dermatology practice in the world. I was first diagnosed with melanoma when I was 22. I tried to see a dermatologist, but was told it would take at least 3 months to get in. And so I went to my primary care physician who biopsied my mole, and it ended up being a stage 2 melanoma. If I had waited 3 months, I honestly don't know if I would still be here. Skin issues are incredibly common. 2.3 billion people around the world have skin issues every year. Just like me, 2/3 of these cases are first assessed in primary care, but these doctors misdiagnose half of cases. And experts take up to 6 months to get in to be seen. Who's tried to make a dermatology appointment here? Yep, you know. So in general, skin diseases are very common and hard to identify, and it's really hard to get in to see a dermatologist. At Piction Health, we're solving this problem. Our dermatologists see patients online within 48 hours. This means we take referrals from doctors, diagnose, prescribe, and monitor over time, solving the full problem for patients. Every case is completed by a board-certified dermatologist, and the quality of care we deliver is on par with in-person care in diagnosis and inpatient outcomes. If patients need in-person care, we get them quickly with our local partners. So how do we make money? Like every practice, we take health insurance and patients pay us directly. We are now in network with more than 1 million patients in the state of Connecticut and are in the process of getting coverage with all commercial payers in the states we're open in. What we do differently is we are the only dermatology practice really built for scale. Our patients get better, faster care, and our dermatologists care for 15 times more patients than they could otherwise. And we can do this because we've built the largest and most actionable database in the world of photos of skin diseases. Our database is 10 times the size of any competitors. And from these images, we built an AI on par with a dermatologist. We built this data set by partnering with more than 200,000 dermatologists in more than 20 different countries, including South Africa, Tunisia, Bolivia, in order to create a data set that's representative across all skin tones. As we grow, our data set will only increase our advantage with gold standard exclusive data. How we deliver care is very simple. Patients with skin issues simply visit our website on their phone and fill in our form. Everyone get out your phone, I'm just kidding. From there, our dermatologists review each case within 48 hours. Then our providers chat with patients and answer any questions. From there, patients pick up prescriptions at their local pharmacy. We make a difficult process easy. We have a great team. I'm originally trained as a mechanical engineer before working in management consulting. I came back to school to MIT for a degree focused on product development in the SDM program. My co-founder and CTO, Pranav, has over 10 years of experience in cutting-edge software R&D. Bridget, our machine learning engineer, is an expert in applied AI. And Dr. Neil Kumar is a serial founder and board-certified dermatologist. We also have other dermatologists, machine learning experts, and marketing experts to help us grow and scale. We've raised a total of $4.2 million to date. We've now opened our virtual practice in New Hampshire, Connecticut, Florida, and now Massachusetts. Simply visit pictionhealth.com on your phone and follow the steps. Since launching in January, we've been fortunate enough to be doubling every month in patients and in revenue, and we're excited to keep growing and scaling. We built this company because this is something I wish I could have had. Fortunately, I was able to catch my case, but so many people aren't. What we care about most is making sure every person can access expert care when they need it most. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
So what's the relationship between the dermatologists and your company? Are they employees or are they contracted, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we have a mix, but really for the care delivery, we have 1099 contractors, and then we expect to bring on a chief medical officer at the right time. Yeah. Yep.
You mentioned that it takes a long time to get an appointment, but you are guaranteeing something in 48 hours. How are you able to do that?
Yeah, so that's the coolest part about our business, is that we've enabled and created a system to where a dermatologist may take 10 or 15 minutes in person, and we can cut that down dramatically by enabling them to be surrounded by resources and making things really simple to communicate with patients. So we cut that down to a minute at this stage. Every case takes about a minute or two, and we can cut that down even further. And how we use AI to make it faster, like we use tech enablement in a variety of ways, and we also use specifically AI. One of the ways we use AI is for like checking photo quality, because without any guidance, patients take photos and 50% of them are readable by a dermatologist. But if you provide guidance and use AI to check the quality, you can get that over 90%. So that we have a variety of ways we use AI in the whole workflow in order to streamline that process. Yeah.
So it's interesting that you said at the beginning, like you deliver quality that's some on par or superior to what's delivered currently, right?
Yes.
If you keep scaling,
yeah,
you have to maintain your contractor population and keep growing the contractor population. You have to maintain some standards while managing the burnout of contractors who are doing one case per minute.
Yes.
3 days. So how do you think about the pipeline of people to maintain and support that?
Of course. So we think about that a lot, because like one of the biggest problems in healthcare is the lack of scalability and the many to one rather than one to many. There are a lot of things though, if you have shadowed a doctor, that are a waste of their time that someone else can be doing, checking boxes, entering things. And so there's some sort of like very simple stuff. But then there's also just enabling our providers to be able to see dropping that amount of time really enables one dermatologist to manage many more patients. We do, of course, have to think about things like licensure by state and like get ahead of that and like get our providers licensed in advance in 20 states. You know, some dermatologists we work with today are licensed in more than 20 states. So we have that like scalability at this point. But certainly if we keep doubling every month, we're gonna have to get ahead of it. Yeah.
So what percentage of the actual visual inspections result in a requirement for a biopsy? And in that case, how do you accelerate that time frame? Because you have to still make a physical appointment.
Yeah. So in terms of the percentage of biopsy, I don't know that off the top of my head. I can certainly say less than 50% require biopsy. And that's because there are cases that are very clearly benign to a dermatologist, but not clearly benign to a patient. But then in terms of how do we get them in-person care? So we have partnerships with local dermatologists. Some people don't realize this, but in fee-for-service, procedures are more heavily reimbursed. And so we're basically sending them patients that they're more likely to make more revenue per minute on. So it's a win for them. And then of course, a win for us, because we want to make sure our patients get seen in person quickly. They've also been pre-qualified to most likely involve a procedure, right? So there's a few things going on. Yeah.
How does potentially reimbursement work in this case? Is it mostly patient pay, or you're working with insurance companies to get this covered?
Yeah, so we initially started with self-pay because it's sort of simple to get off the ground. But now we're in network with more than a million people in the state of Connecticut, and we expect to be covered within the next 2 months with all the major commercial payers in Connecticut. And then we just started the process for getting coverage in Massachusetts with commercial payers as well. So it's certainly in our model to take health insurance. And I mean, to be able to take health insurance vastly increases the number of patients who want to work with us because of both trust signaling and then also just like paying a copay rather than paying like $80 or more.
Yeah, what is the self-pay cost? And then the flip side of that would be, what's your take on the 1099 dermatologist? How are you making money?
Sure. So our self-pay price at this stage is $80. How much we make on an insurance covered case is like for one encounter is like in the range of $130 to $250. And then in the next 6 months, we're planning to deploy at home prescription delivery, which is a way to expand total lifetime value per patient. And then just like using our AI and scalability, when we have more volume, we can enable dermatologists to be making just as much remotely as they do with in-person Botox, which is non-zero amount of money. And be able to deliver this care while also still making like in the range of 35 to 60% margins, which is expected in about a year. Yeah.
What percent of patients who use the app end up requiring an in-person follow-up visit with a dermatologist, and what does the wait time look like when they are scheduled for that person?
Of course. So in terms of the percentage that need in-person care, it hugely varies per condition they come to us for. But with pigmented lesions, it's higher. With rashes, we can manage most of those cases remotely. Maybe like 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 require in-person care. And then what was your second question?
How long would the wait be?
Wait times. Yeah. So right now it's within a week or 2 to get in-person care. And then we're working on partnerships to be able to drop that to within 2 or 3 days. Yeah.
Since you're taking a picture, is there a feedback loop that tells you what the diagnosis is for that picture?
Yeah. So we use AI internally in order to allocate the right case to the right provider at the right time. It's not patient exposed though.
So the second follow-up is there a future where you take the dermatologist out of the decision-making process?
This is a dangerous question, as I'm sure everyone here knows. But really our model is around making sure every case is reviewed and approved by a board-certified dermatologist and just dropping the amount of time that takes for them to do a fair review. Yeah.
Since your model's around access to care, I was wondering if you could comment on the model as a standalone company or app versus integrating with an established either telehealth company or PCP practice model, if this could be provider enablement rather than patient self-service.
Sure, yeah. So we actually had a SaaS product selling into PCPs to enable them to have the expertise of a dermatologist. And we made a change to this model. We made that decision in September and we opened our first clinic in late December in New Hampshire. And we made that decision primarily for business model reasons. There's long sales cycles that are a limitation, EHR integration, which is an infinite problem. And then primarily like right now we get paid in a standard and normal way that healthcare is paid for is like including a service, and that we can just use our AI and other resources to make doctors faster. And so we just decided, like we were still growing like 30% month over month with increased like PCP growth of users, but we just decided to make a shift because we could have more impact on more patients more quickly. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the data set? How is it labeled, checked, quality controlled to make sure that the input was good for the AI model? And then how are you thinking about that as a competitive moat? What prevents another large company like United Health Group or Optum from doing this?
Sure, yeah. So in terms of how we checked it, every photo we collected from dermatologists came with the associated diagnosis, and then we checked it internally with our dermatologists. And then, but like dermatology is an art mixed with a science. Even dermatologists are 75% top 3 accurate, right? And so we do think about like with this model, we can actually be able to track patient outcomes and know if the patient got better, which is even better than biopsy evidence. And so we do think about like the continuous nature of this new model, building that gold standard database. And then what's going to prevent someone else from doing it? I mean, I don't know if anyone in this room has data cleaned or even like acquired a data set, but it's a real pain. So
Did you have access to the clinical data as well, or just the labeled dermatologist image? Like, was that the clinical access, or did you have like, this was actually diagnosed as stage 4 melanoma from, a clinical record or anything like that?
yeah, so I mean, the associated diagnosis was always provided by the expert. Yeah.
Plenty of market right in front of you in dermatology. Just curious as to whether you would take other image-based diagnostic or monitoring segments and be able to expand into those, or you're staying strictly in dermatology?
Yeah, of course. So dermatology in general is like is $85 billion market just in the US and is bigger broadly. And there's a lot of very specific things we do in our virtual care for dermatology. So I do see expansion opportunities, including like identifying patients earlier for dermatology clinical trials is something we can support with our current workflow, and other things, expansions like that. But I mean, we could apply it to other areas, but just decided instead of focusing around the like technology, focus around like solve the full derm problem. Yeah.
Do you do eyelid lesions? Like, because I get a lot of like dyes, bumps.
Yeah, we do. So yeah, all hair, skin, and nails is under dermatology, and so yeah, we also do eyelid issues.
A lot of the time when I refer them to dermatology, they get referred back, and I have to refer them to like oculoplastics.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So like, where is the line?
I'm not a clinician, so I'm not the, so I can say we've done eyelid related cases, but I could get back to you with a more formal answer.
Yeah, then we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Do any of our panelists have any questions? Yeah, we have a question in the back.
Yeah.
Your next capital raise and use of proceeds on that?
Yeah, so we're in the process of closing a like 500K safe in order to go through the first half of 2024 and then raise a Series A round either this fall or in the spring.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So we got our first 2 teams, and now we're moving ahead with our panel. If you're here, so you're probably somehow intertwined within the startup and investing ecosystem. And undoubtedly, I did not expect for us to host this panel off the heels of a few bank fillers. But this is the world that we're in, and it's undoubtedly a challenging time. And I'm sure that a lot of us here would appreciate some more guidance and some expertise from people who have more overview of the market. So with that, we are glad to bring this panel together to give you some more insights into that, and also just to let you know who to reach out to in case you need some additional support. With that, I'm proud to present the Fundraising and the Challenging Environment panel hosted by our friend Laura. Laura is an Associate Director of Political Innovation at Click Therapeutics. Her expertise lies in leveraging the digital platform to develop and deliver evidence-based therapeutic interventions that have the potential to transform patient outcomes. Laura is also an entrepreneur herself who has co-founded a Boston-based healthcare startup called Redox in 2018. So she's been through the fundraising cycles before, she's been through all of it, and now an operating role as well. So perfect person to host this panel. So welcome Laura and welcome all our panelists. Please go ahead and yeah, let's get started.
All right. Thank you, Jensen. Wow, that is a very cheery photo, probably before I got into startups. Just kidding. Well, wonderful. Thank you all for joining us this evening and to our esteemed panelists. As you heard, the topic here tonight is fundraising in a down economy, and something that I'm sure is a relevant topic, regardless of the markets and the status of global economy. But again, I think, in today's ever-evolving business landscape, startups face numerous challenges regardless of the timing, but particularly when we're faced with economic challenges, resources become a little bit more constrained. Investors become a little bit more, how should we say this, drawn back a little bit. And, capital becomes a little bit more scarce as well. So what are some of the opportunities that companies could leverage during this period to create new milestones, get them to the next milestones, and create a little bit of a longer runway? So without further ado, I would like to take a moment and have each of our panelists introduce themselves again. I know we had a little bit of introduction at the top, but if you give us a little bit of background of your title and role, and if you could, so what is one key takeaway or observation that you've witnessed during fundraising in a down economy? And maybe we'll start with Curdy, please.
Can you hear me? All right. So Curdy Levy, Managing Director of Techstars Boston. Been with Techstars now for 4 years. Seen a lot of different industries and a lot of different cycles in that short amount of time. So one key takeaway right now, what I'm finding is that fundamentals really, really matter at this point in time. There was a time just a short while ago when just talking about hyped up ideas in the future really generated funding. And I'm really thinking it's good for founders to go through this cycle right now so they can think about how does my business work? How does the business model work? Really thinking through how big is this market? How do I go to market? Do I have the right team? All of the fundamentals. So I think that's what we need to focus on.
Hi, everyone. Kate McLaughlin. I currently lead the life science strategy team at Millipore Sigma. Many of you at the bench might recognize us from all of our chemicals and bottles and lab supplies, but we also support pharmaceutical development and are a larger part of the Merck Group, which plays in electronics as well as healthcare and pharmaceuticals. So I represent more of the strategic perspective and also spent 10 years in consulting before joining my current role. I think it's really important for founders these days to understand or find those opportunities for a win-win. Somebody who doesn't only see the financial value or proceeds, but who shares your goals and therefore has a reason to invest in you beyond the financials.
David?
Thanks. My name's Dave Uffer. I'm the Vice President of General Inception. In the MedTech practice, we are a venture studio, for lack of a better term. We are an early stage, pre-seed to seed stage investor. We not only invest capital, but we help build out the company from co-founding to the next inflection point where we can come in and place the next round of capital. I've been purely MedTech for about 30 years. 25 years I spent in multi-billion-dollar corporations on the strategy and business development side. And then I flipped to the other side of the table in advisory, doing investment banking and strategy consulting. As far as this environment today, I think we really look for, of course, strong technologies and good TAMs and markets that you were talking about, but we want to see teams that can get it done. You have to be extremely efficient in today's environment because dollars are a little bit harder to come by and people want to deploy it where they can see milestones and progress being made. So I'd say come up with very strong plans. We could talk AI all day long if you want to go back there. But look, those are lofty goals, but I think in the nuts and bolts of today's environment, show that you're making progress.
So we've already met. So nice to see you all again. I'll just echo one or two things that our panel here has said. Investors are taking a lot longer these days to find the right opportunities. It goes without saying, I hope from the earlier discussion, that intellectual property really does matter. And investors are really taking their time to look into the intellectual property assets that companies have. The other thing that we've just noticed recently, in most of our deals is the focus on the team. It's never been, I don't think, more important. So we've been representing startup companies. This was my 26th year doing it. I don't think in the history of those 2.5 decades, it's been more important to focus on the team. And does the team have what it takes in order to take the invention, the idea, the IP, whatever it is, the assets of the company to the next stage, to the next level? I can't tell you how many conversations we're part of where our investor clients really drill down on our startup companies, on the ability of the team to take this company to the next level. So I would spend a lot of time focusing on that.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Singer. I'm a founder and investor. I would say control the factor that you can, which is your spend. You're not saving as much money as you can. Okay, so take a look at your expenditures. I started my first company in 2006. We had a little problem, financial, nationwide, worldwide financial issue in 2008, you may remember. And we sold our company in 2009. In that interim, we had a very hard time raising capital. In fact, we were never able to get a venture fund to invest in us. But when we got an offer to sell our company, we realized that we actually owned a whole lot of it. Mm-hmm. So there's a positive side to not being able to raise capital. That's the, if you watched the Silicon Valley, it's the Russ Hahnemann theory. Okay.
Great, thank you, Michael. And maybe David, I'll start off with you and going back to, not to point fingers to Matt again, he mentioned some of the common pitfalls in terms of trademarks and IP. From your lens and experience, what are some of the common mistakes the startups make at the initiation of their funding activities?
Oh, geez. we need a lot. There are so many pitfalls. I think we just heard about spend. One of the first things is don't be cheap, but be frugal. And that, look at this as if it's your own money when you're spending other people's money. There's, we don't want to see companies take shortcuts and not spend appropriately, but we want them to spend prudently. Use this capital efficiently and effectively. Do not, be wasteful with this. So that's one of the pitfalls that I see people, I just placed a $3 million round and now we can go travel around the world doing all these junkets. And I'm not saying junkets, but, a lot of things that really aren't making progress with the company. So that's probably the biggest pitfall I see, people not sticking to a budget and within the constraints of the capital which they place, because you don't know when that next round is coming.
I have a closet full of fleeces with logos of all the companies I've invested in, and when I get one, I can't stand it. I'm like, why? If I want a fleece, I'll go buy it. Don't give me one.
Very strong opinions up here. Anything to add?
I'll lean in a little bit. One of the things that a lot of founders think is, I'm developing everything now. It'll all come together. I'm going to raise because we need runway. And it's a big pitfall because investors aren't interested in just giving you runway. They're interested in what are you going to do with the money that I give you? And so even though it's hard, taking the time, talking to advisors and people in the industry to talk about what are we going to do with the money that comes in and what results are going to be tracked. Someone mentioned milestones with that money and being able to articulate that well. And that comes back to, this team kind of knows what they're talking about.
Absolutely. So ensuring that continuous engagement with your current investors and future engagements in terms of what are your key metrics that you're working towards and milestones clearly laid out, it sounds like. Maybe Kate, I'll jump to you next. You're from, you've really led this role in terms of navigating your company through many storms with strategic leaning and planning. How does that apply to when it comes to fundraising? Aside from the financial modeling, how do you move the business forward, scale smartly instead of fast, as we've seen the past couple of years, really having to trim in recent months just because of that exponential growth that's occurred?
Yeah, and I think it's a matter of focus, whether you're going through a period of some dramatic growth and really making best on the opportunity that you saw in front of you, or you're at a much earlier stage and deciding which of these indications am I going to pursue, which version of this technology should I sink my team's limited time and resources into. And so I think it's critical that every company sort of think in those different scenarios. And if I choose path A, if I choose path B, and commit to the most valuable one to you, because if you try to spread yourself too thin, as a lot of companies had the luxury of doing over the past 5 years when capital was a lot easier to come by, you're not going to get to the finish line or that next inflection point or milestone that you need to get to. So understanding that you will need to make trade-offs and what you are prioritizing as you make those trade-offs, I think matters to every company, whether you're a multi-billion-dollar company or whether you're a 10-person company.
Any thoughts from David or Michael?
I couldn't agree more. I don't want to make it sound like I was being a jerk, but that was almost a trap question when I threw out about, are you expanding into other areas? I get really frustrated with companies that say they have a platform and they're trying to do everything, but they never do one thing.
Right.
Get something done and then move on to your next. And sometimes you can parallel path a little bit if you stagger them. You don't want to wait to get to a 5-year finish line and then go start number 2. So, you know, a little bit of spend on some skunk works in another area, but boy, if you can't finish off one application or one indication, then you're just a scientist. And we're looking for business leaders, people that are making businesses that are going to be commercial products. So I wholeheartedly agree with that comment.
Michael?
I'll wait till the next question. Talk a lot.
So you're talking about a little bit about how to communicate their value proposition, market potential. Does that change at all with, you know, the current down economy? Does the messaging remain the same? I think you touched a little bit on terms of being clear, concise, limiting your spend, but being smart about getting to the next milestone. But there's also anticipation, almost a want from investors as well, and perhaps other partners to accelerate timelines to the next milestone. How do you play that and balance that out as a startup? Michael?
The question is about the macroeconomic climate and how.
Yes, so should the value prop change, the messaging of how you position your company change with the current market?
I think in substance, your value proposition doesn't change because you've discovered a new and better way of doing something, and that doesn't change, right? What people may be interested in is your market projections, your ability to start selling. Personally, I don't worry about that so much. First of all, I don't think the economy is that bad. Sorry to kind of undermine the theme today, but second of all, the economy will improve in the next few years, I hope. So I'm not, you know, if someone's investing in you, they're not too worried about 12 months from now, right? They shouldn't be.
Any other thoughts? Matt, from your perspective, are there any recent legal developments or trends that lifecycle companies should keep an eye out for?
Yes. You know, the one thing I'll say 2 things. I'm going to veer a little bit from your question and interpret it the way I want to interpret it. That's what lawyers do. 2 things. Number 1, we were talking a bit earlier about spend, and I'm going to say something that I think most of you are going to think is shocking coming from a lawyer. Mind your legal spend. Okay, you all need lawyers. That's an unfortunate reality of building a business. They are a necessary evil in what you're doing. But I can't tell you how much money, and I know this is going to sound shocking coming from me, but how much money is wasted on law firms. Okay, why? Because you're not being mindful of your spend. You're taking every deal you have, you're sending it to a big law firm like Morrison & Foerster, a big expensive law firm, and you're not watching the clock, and you're not watching the deal, and you're not watching the terms, and you're not doing a lot of the things you could be doing yourselves in order to control that cost. I would much rather have you as a client for 25 years happy than a client for one deal pissed off because you spent an enormous amount of money and your investors are pissed off, and you turn around and, you know, you blame us. You have to do that management. And so much money is flushed down the toilet because companies don't mind that spend. That's my perspective. I'm not sure if you all share it, but that's my perspective on that. Number two, watch your transactions. We just literally this week, we have a deal going on, and an investor, a strategic investor, raised an issue on a particular transaction that our client had entered into several years ago. And there's a huge gaping error in the deal. In fact, our client didn't have the rights to grant the license that they granted to a particular set of data to this particular customer in a particular industry. They had a limited right in a particular field, and this license went beyond that field. And the investor who's essentially acquiring the company raised it as a massive issue, and it is a massive issue. It's a gaping, gaping, gaping hole in the deal, and they just cut the purchase price by 30%. Because of that issue. Okay, the company will run out of money if we don't close this deal in a couple of weeks. This deal has to happen. That issue could have been prevented in 15 minutes. Simply by watching the deals you enter into. A lot of you as startups, growing companies, growing fast companies like the dermatology company we just heard from, you're growing quickly, you're growing fast. Take your time to make sure your deals, your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed, not necessarily a legal development, but an internal diligence infrastructure you can implement in order to prevent ultimately what could kill or significantly reduce the value of the transactions you ultimately enter into.
Matt, any additional thoughts or?
Well, I might just ask, someone wanted to talk about AI, so I'll bring it up. One of the things that every company that I talk to, it's on their minds, is how do they make processes faster using AI right now? And to Matt's point, of course, AI would never trust as a lawyer, but a lot of that diligence, early brush, literally put AI to work and get some thoughts and then present those in a more effective way to spend money on them with the experts who can actually make it right. But I'm talking lead gen, onboarding of customers, everyone exploring all kinds of ways that AI can drive down costs. It's amazing to see how many companies are already doing this.
Absolutely. And that does, as someone mentioned earlier, become a little bit more complex once you get into the therapeutic side and the process side and predicting models, how that affects.
Well, and that's the thing, is having, really focused expertise on top of a lot of busy work that can do that for a fraction of the cost.
And this may be a general question posed. Have you seen a shift in that in terms of when you're evaluating startup companies, the use of that AI technology to ramp up to production or process flow or increase activities? Have you seen that in your evaluation, incorporating that as you assess ventures to invest in, startups to invest in? David or Michael?
I wouldn't categorically say it's an increased valuation. But it certainly made me pause and look at companies for how they can operate, again, more efficiently. There's so much efficiency with these AI platforms and solutions that I see companies that can do things so much faster and so much smarter. I mentioned the past 5 years, I was with an advisory firm, and I talked to a couple of my former partners, and they said, I just completed a project 10 days earlier by using AI on a deliverable. It didn't change their content, but it just made it much quicker and much more profitable project that they complete. So yeah, I think AI, again, is it telling me big valuation? That's a core part of their solution. One thing, but it certainly makes the companies much more efficient.
So I'm seeing a lot of AI now in startups that are pitching. For example, a diagnostic that gathers data through a special kind of microscope and then passes it through AI to interpret the data. So all kinds of things like this. And I will say that I think it increases a burden on the startup to show results to the early investor. The reason being, they can't explain in principle how the AI is working, right? I mean, traditionally they come and say, well, let me tell you how the technology works. And if it's a relatively predictable science, you can say, okay, I understand you've explained it and I believe in you, and I'm going to take a risk that your theory will work in practice. But with AI, it has to be based on the results. Yeah.
And that we won't go into the regulatory side. Unless you want to touch
Another
base.
topic for another day.
So I know we touched a little bit about some of the key characteristics, what you're looking for. I'm curious if there's any recommendation for alternative funding sources or financing options that startups should explore when the traditional models aren't available or are a little bit slower to come up to grab. So maybe
I think
Kate?
that might be my cue
Yeah.
because as a strategic, of course, Millipore Sigma or Merck KGaA has a lot of internal R&D and collaborations ongoing, but we also like to reach out to the startup community because we're just solving scientific problems. And that's what all of you are doing as well. And it may not be a venture investment that demands equity. It may be a collaboration and some research grants that are just in our shared best interest. And we're not the only pharma or biotech company out there who has both a venture arm as well as just collaborations and opportunities to build something together because we're all about the science. And I think I speak for our competitors here as well. So just think again about who has those same goals. And it might be a strategic, it might be a disease foundation, it might be somebody's aunt who happens to have connections to a different community than you have yourself. So I think it's important to get creative and not just go to the same taps that have been opened for a long time.
I'm fired up tonight. So first I want to applaud Millipore for participating in minority equity investing. And not only that, but of course, collaboration with us, co-development and so forth, because I was pretty angry last week at a conference here in Boston, where I think it's irresponsible of some of these multi-billion-dollar companies not to have a little venture fund. It's a couple dollars, it's pocket change in a side drawer that they should deploy. And it's, to me, your responsibility to signal to other investors that we're investing in our industry. We're making billions of dollars off of whether it's biotech, medtech, what have you. And we should signal to the investors that we're investing there. It's chump change compared to what is needed to fund these companies, but it's really a corporate responsibility. So thanks for that. So don't forget the corporates. You don't know, even if they don't state that they have a CVC, that a lot of times there are dollars available for that, or ways to engage with them that can be much more efficient. But alternate sources of funding. Somebody I started in this business with 30 years ago just sold this company. His first $15 million was Department of Defense funding for soft tissue repair, which they want their troops back out there as quickly as possible. So don't negate a lot of your non-dilutive capital sources, which there are so many of today.
Yeah. It takes me back to my days in consulting. So many of our startup clients actually had a DARPA connection or other connection to the government and military in different countries because they have a shared goal there.
Yeah, and you can take that at any time. You can take equity as well as non-dilutive funding.
And go ahead. I see Michael, you're ready.
I suppose I would also say, think a bit about the investor's position. If you're having trouble, it might be that the way the mechanism you've chosen for the investment simply isn't that attractive. For example, safes don't bear interest. They might have been attractive when interest rates were 0%, but now I can earn a risk-free return of 5%. So it's not so nice anymore, right? And I think people are also, at least I'm getting a little tired of safes. They've been around long enough that we've seen how things can go wrong, and they're very problematic.
Well, anything? I know we have to wrap up soon, so I wanted to get some last thoughts from the panel here. As we know here all today, startups are the lifeblood of innovation. There's always going to be a new product, service, a demand from the market. And so I'm curious for you to share a little bit of a strategy or a key takeaway from your lens on how startups can employ to show their resilience, their adaptability and ability to weather. And I know the market doesn't look so bad in your opinion, Michael, but for startups that are, struggling to raise in the current atmosphere. And maybe I'll start down that line. Michael, will you kick us off?
Well, if you're really having trouble raising, maybe you should take that as a signal that you should change something.
Matt?
That was a little harsh.
Goes first to go.
Trying to be helpful.
I'm gonna say, be mindful of your internal diligence with respect to keeping the house in order. We've seen so many companies fall apart because their house is not in order. If you can operationalize a lot of those things, you've heard me talk about IP, you've heard me talk about your deals, your transactions. Just be mindful, pay attention, and operationalize that infrastructure. I think you'll find you'll have a lot more success. Can I just make one shameless plug? In 2 weeks, Bio is coming to Boston. It's a big conference. Many of us are part of it. We're super happy it's in Boston this year. Last year it was in San Diego. Lots of us are speaking at the conference. I encourage you, if you can attend, to attend. But if you can't attend, that's okay too. I'm not sure how we would manage this, but MoFo is having a big party on the Tuesday night down at the Seaport where the conference is being held. You're all invited. I'm not sure how we get the invitation to people, but we'd love to see you. Look for folks who you can network with, who you can get to know in the legal community, in the venture community, wherever it is, in the strategic community, and build that network. That network will ultimately, I think, really propel the companies forward a lot more than you can do on your own. So I offer that from MoFo's perspective. I'm sure my colleagues would as well, and happy to help however we can.
Following on that theme a little bit, I never wanted to go into consumer packaged goods or anything. Right out of business school, right into healthcare, and I think you'll find people that come into this market. Of course, it's a business, but people are impassioned here, and they're always willing to help and lend a helping hand. So on that networking vein, use your resources and always ask somebody. I don't think anybody would say no to doing a little bit of extra to help. So when we're talking about finding capital, look, the traditional VCs have frustrated me a little bit that they're kicking the can down the road. In other words, if they were investing seed, they're at Series A, Series B. I call them growth equity versus venture capital. Where's the venture with a lot of these traditional venture firms? There's plenty of money still available at the VC. The early stage, be creative. There is a lot of money out there, but it's not in your traditional sources. Be ready to lift a lot of rocks and go salamander hunting. There's sovereign funds. There's funds international that people are looking to put money and invest money into US-based healthcare companies. Tons. I have a friend that's headed off to the Emirates tomorrow, where he's taking in $75 million. They can't write checks big enough in some areas. So there's a lot of different sources out there. Keep at it.
I think it's all the more important now to recognize that none of us know everything too. And if you don't know what you don't know, there's going to be a big gap in your business plan when those investors come around. So being able to seek out advice, whether it's an informal event or finding some colleagues, finding some strategic advisors, some legal advisors, some financial advisors, to understand the market that you want to serve, especially if it's a regulated market and you don't have experience in a regulated market, you are going to get tripped up, and nobody needs to hear the story of Theranos again. So understand and have the humility to reach out and confirm your suspicions, even if you think you know, because it's a dynamic regulatory environment and competitive environment as well. So the more people you talk with, the better your plan will be, and the more credibility you will have as an individual pioneer as well.
That's great. Gosh, I agree with so many of those. The only thing I would add, and this is less for the therapeutics, more for the kind of infrastructure around it, the software, et cetera. I've invested in companies that have had, so they're building the tech, which is what they need the money for, but they've been able to sell services. And it's a really nice back pocket for anyone who has expertise in a certain area, because what it is basically paid customer development and customer discovery. And so for anyone where that makes sense, and I know some of the early drug discovery that doesn't necessarily make sense, but it could, maybe it's research, maybe it's something else. So that's all I'd add.
Great. Thank you so much. Any last thoughts? All right. Well, thank you so much. To the audience, if we can give a big round of applause to our panelists. And if I can shamelessly plug, this is a very remarkable amount of experience up here, as you've heard. So please take some time to connect with them after we wrap up the presentations later this evening. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'd love to slide into the central beginning. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, amazing job by all of our panelists, and yeah, incredible insights. And yeah, really excited to welcome our next presenter, Thuc View from Omni Labs. And yeah, excited about your digital robotics company and looking forward to learning more.
Hi, hello everyone. It's great to be here. My name is Thuc and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Omni Labs. So I actually went through 2 major lockdowns during the pandemic and saw firsthand how overwhelmed and understaffed the healthcare system were. But the situation didn't actually get much better after the pandemic, right? Hospitals are still dealing with a lot of challenges with shortage of labor, rising labor costs, and fast-growing demand in care. And so we believe our robotics solution can help. We did our research and identify disinfection is actually one of the low-hanging fruit for us to tackle. So disinfection is sort of like the deep cleaning that hospital has to do between surgery cases or after a patient discharge. And disinfection will involve spraying the whole room with chemicals, keep the surface wet for at least 3 minutes, and then wipe it down with special wipes. So the process is very labor intensive, usually take 30 to 45 minutes. And because hospital, they don't have enough people, they have too many cases. And so usually disinfection is not done right. And sometimes even skip, kind of scary. And this is the reason why we see a lot of rise in terms of the number of people getting affected by infection in the hospital, more than 1.7 million. Resulting in over 100,000 deaths and $30 billion in terms of medical costs. And so this motivated us to develop and launch OmniClean, which is a fully autonomous robot that can disinfect using UV light. So the robot can disinfect a room with UV lights in 10 to 12 minutes, so much less than just a manual disinfection. And so now hospital can actually squeeze this between cases. We are right now selling at half the cost of other solutions, but can disinfect much faster and easier than other competitors. And so let me show you how it actually works. So the robots will navigate, drive itself around the room, and it can avoid obstacles. It can map out a room and then use UV lights with really high intensity to disinfect high-touch surfaces like around the bed, the panel, the bathroom. So with this UV light, the robots can actually get to log 6 reduction of pathogens like the bacteria, viruses, fungi. So it's 99.999% of cure rate, which is great news. And they can work in tandem in order to disinfect larger space, like this waiting room, which had never been disinfected ever before until we had the robot. So it's kind of, it was a good news. All right. So we are seeing traction across some of the largest healthcare systems in the US, like Veterans Affairs, Indian Health Services, Baylor Scott and White. Together, they have more than 2,000 potential locations for us to roll out. One thing we really like about the market is that it's well educated with some explosive growth. So hospitals recognize UV as the new standard, and they either already having it and looking to replace or trying to buy a new solution. So we estimate there are about more than 3 billion worth of new UV solution that will be acquired in the next 5 years. But this is only for hospital in the US. There are many other verticals. So for example, long-term care, senior living facilities, clean room for farmers. Hi, Kate. And so, I think a lot of potential here. Okay, so we're selling the robots in two ways. One is CapEx, so about 75,000 upfront and then 8,000 a year for service and maintenance, or RaaS model, so robot as a service, 30,000 a year with usually 3 years contract with the hospital. But the good news is our cost is only 5,000. So we have a massive margin here to play with. But we don't plan to stop there. So UV disinfection is the first use case that we want to tackle. But the idea is to actually build out a portfolio of different automated solutions for the hospital, for the common tasks in the hospital environment. So you can see that they're actually using the same base. We already have the autonomy, all the hardware stack. And so now we can build other solution by building just like different components and put on top of the base. So things like delivery of food, medicine, sterilized equipment, or waste disposal. So these are the use cases that can really make an impact, allowing the doctors, the nurses, the staff to focus on the patients. All right, so I'm going to leave you with this slide of these advantages that we believe that allow us to really compete and capture the lion's share of this market. And thank you for listening and open for questions. Yeah, Michael.
So very nice. I understand you're seeing log-6 reductions, but do you have data you can show with some representative organisms?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we have third-party independent lab tests that's showing all of this efficacy.
I would include that in your presentation because it's fundamental to what you're doing, right?
Great, thank you. And actually, hospital can see ROI in 6 months compared from manual disinfection versus robotics disinfection because of the labor save and also the chemicals. Yeah.
You mentioned experienced team. What's this team made up of?
Great question. I think I might have some. Oh no, not in there. So we launched our companies in 2015. So we've been around for a while. We deploy more than 4,000 robots. So we had experience from developing to manufacturing. We also manufacture in-house in Silicon Valley using a combination of injection molding and 3D printing. So it's a really unique way to approach this whole space. We're probably the only company that's doing this right now. The team combined of experts from Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, Google. This is actually my third company, shameless plug. My first one got acquired by Google. And so we have, we've been in this game for a while. Yeah, thank you.
What is your contact times compared to like disinfectants, like chemical disinfectants?
So the question is,
What your contact times are, how, with chemical disinfectant, how comparing to that, how much longer?
Yeah, so with chemical, it's usually 30 to 45 minutes to disinfect the whole room. And for us, it's 10 to 12 minutes. So much shorter.
No, the question I'm trying to ask is how long does it stay effective until you need to do it again?
Oh, so basically, after you disinfect it, it's become clean and it can be used for the next patient because we're treating like the harder to kill drug-resisting bugs that will spread from patient to patient, like C. diff, MSRA, right? And so these are the one that after you discharge the patient and disinfect the room, it won't come back. I hope that answers. Yeah, maybe. Okay.
So you mentioned that a lot of hospitals have already adopted a UV system, but I also see you're 2 to 3 years ahead of the competition. Can you talk a little bit about your competition and what's installed already that you need to displace?
Yeah, great question. So the most common solution right now is, like a Xenex. So this like stationary machine, also using some sort of UV lights. And because it's stationary, so people have to push it around the room. But UV is very effective in killing bacteria, but also will give us a nice tan and a lot of trouble, right? So no one can be in the room when it's on. And so people will have to like push it in, run outside, time it, go back in and keep doing that. And so again, right, it's taking a lot more time. With autonomy, it makes it a lot easier, more effective. Yeah, so that's the ahead of the curve that we have there.
Okay. Are there other autonomous robot companies going after this use case too?
Great question. So there are a few other, very small number of other autonomous solutions, but one of them is coming from China, right? And so that's sort of a barrier for entry for them. And the other one is from Europe, and they also clunky and it's not as easy to use as ours. So that's the sort of advantage that we have.
So I'm wondering how, like the UV light, how far of a distance or how close does the distance need to be to actually disinfect the surface? And then how do you plan to, or how does your robot get to hard to reach places? It's a stationary and it is like almost like a like a vacuum that is robotic. Yeah, how are you planning to kind of get to those hard to reach surfaces without using like a person to weave UV?
Right. So the question is, how do we get to like different area, right? So you can see that we designed the robot to be very compact, and the light is actually high enough to like reach all the high, commonly touched area. And the robot will just navigate and then get close to this, like around the bed or the panel. So these are the area that hospital would care the most to prevent the infection. It just, the lights will actually work between 1 to 3 feet. So even though, it's far out, it still provides certain disinfection. And we can actually add disinfection spot. So basically allowing the robot to stay longer at one place. Think of it as like a sunlight, right? Or like a torch. So the closer the torch to the surface, the stronger and the longer you keep it there, the more it will cook the surface. And so you just need to leave it on for a bit longer. And then you get that log 6 reduction.
And can you program it to?
Absolutely, yes.
Times where it goes more like slowly, like around the bed, for instance?
Yeah, we have that. And then also infection prevention protocol can indicate, like what kind of speed you want the robot to move around. So let's say COVID is the easiest thing to eradicate. So the robot will move with like, 1x, but say C. diff, it will move with like 4x amount of time. Yeah.
How do you illuminate surfaces that are shadowed from the UV?
Yeah, so this is the reason why our solution is so much better than stationary, because we mobile, we're moving around the area. So we can hit, the surfaces from different angle, eliminate a lot of the shadowing effects. Like stationary, you cannot. That's why people want to push it. But even then, right, it's limited number of position you can do. Of course, things like, under the cover of the bed, the blanket, nothing you can do about that. And so hospitals have different protocol for that. For example, they can bring that afterwards or something like that, right? Make sure it's already disinfected. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I see two pieces here, right, at a high level. There is one piece, which is the autonomy. So you have a machine that does its thing on itself, right? And I see a second piece, which is the sales cycle, right? So selling to a hospital is a nightmare. You guys are already in, and you're ahead of the game. How defensive are those two positions, right? Because a ton of companies have autonomous platforms, and a ton of companies have existing relationships and contracts with hospitals. How do you protect yourselves from that?
Yeah. So great question. It's actually very rare for a company to have both. And we happen to have both, right? But think about it, like autonomy actually is not new, but to be able to design a system that really fit into the workflow of the hospital is very difficult. On top of that, you need to have like the UV lights, the battery lifetime, right? In order to provide, adequate disinfection. So a lot of that go into the 2 or 3 years I mentioned as the ahead of the curve. And on the other front, I'm sure medical equipment company have, the relationship with all the hospitals. But in order to develop a robotics solution, it takes a lot of things come together from, firmware, hardware, software, autonomy to manufacturing. And so all of that combined make it really hard for someone like us to have, both in the game. Yeah.
Yeah, so where are you right now with funding and your capital raise?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So we, so far, it's been about 8 years. We raised only 14 million, 1-4. So super lean for a robotics company in Silicon Valley. Because we're serial entrepreneurs, so we see the value of staying lean. Right now, we're raising around 3 to 5 million. That will get us to beyond the end of the year. And we project hitting profitability by the end of the year at 7 million of revenue. We have about 2.5 million close for this round. And yeah, just looking to get over that.
What's the pre-money?
44 million cap. Yeah. All right. Great. Thank you so much.
Great job. Cool. Yeah, amazing job. And yeah, great job by all of our presenters so far. And then, yeah, really excited to introduce Sid, our final presenter with Rocket VR.
Thank you so much. Just got to switch the presentation here. All right, just a show of hands. How many of you have tried VR before here? Oh, wow. This is fantastic. So this is going to be an interesting one. My name is Sid Desai. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Rocket VR Health. And our vision at Rocket VR is to envision a world where immersive mental well-being experiences are available for anyone, anywhere. So meet Bob. Bob is one of the 53 million people in the US that's currently experiencing chronic stress. Bob is also one of the 50% of the people that say that they could use more help with stress management. Bob's therapist recommended that he try breathwork and cognitive behavioral therapy to help cope with his stressors. But Bob, just like the 86% of the people that go through therapy, are just unable to practice these skills on a consistent basis, despite knowing the well-researched fact that consistent practice can really help alleviate a lot of the stress and anxiety. In fact, 45% of the people don't even know how to practice and apply these skills in real life. So we thought, what if we completely revamped the way mental well-being is delivered? What if we made it more engaging, more immersive, more data-driven, and to be honest, a little bit more fun? So we got building. Presenting Nova Being. It's a virtual reality mental well-being platform that helps you lower chronic stress and helps you feel your best. What we've done is we've taken clinically validated interventions such as CBT, that's cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness, ACT, and positive psychology. We've combined that with the immersive powers of virtual reality to help you practice your mental well-being. Nova Being is more than just watching 3D videos in VR. Everything about the app is interactive. You're not just watching 3D videos. Ever wanted to meditate in the middle of a forest? With Nova Being, you can do that. Ever wanted to go through and practice a therapeutic game that helps you lower anxiety? With Nova Being, you can do that too. Ever wanted to meet your therapist in VR or potentially other people going through on a similar journey? With Nova Being, you can do that too. Our VR locations are breathtaking. And for users like Bob, we're adding plenty of amazing magical moments within the VR experience that will help them feel instant calm or focus, depending on what their choices are. So we've been doing some really interesting research, and our early beta users are loving our product. But don't just take my word for it.
Build a tower? That's crazy.
He's
That's unbelievable.
So that right there is the Chief Experience Officer at UMass Memorial Health, the birthplace of MBSR, which is mindfulness-based stress reduction. And we're actually working on a physician well-being project with them. So the total mental well-being market is set to grow to $150 billion by 2028. At the same time, you have the immersive sort of the digital mental health app market that's set to grow to $15 billion in the same time frame. So we believe that as users look for more novel, immersive interventions to engage with their mental well-being, we're kind of in the right place at the right time and can capture a significant portion of the immersive mental well-being market. To do this, we have a unique go-to-market approach. While our initial focus was on generating clinical validation and data, which we've been doing with our 4 healthcare partners in the US and Canada, we're all set to launch our app in the VR app stores. In fact, it's already out. We anticipate reaching 5,000 users in the VR app stores by the end of the year with 5 B2B healthcare customers. We intend to double that in 2024 and then 10x that to 50 healthcare partners by 2025. So companies like Calm and Headspace became billion-dollar properties in the last decade. And then more recently, companies like Applied VR have gotten FDA clearances on their VR therapeutic, as well as gotten HCPCS code coverage from CMS. We believe that our immersive well-being experiences, our engaging healthcare partnerships, and our proven protocol will be unique value differentiators. So our business model is pretty simple. For the consumer app store, we're just going to charge a $99 per year subscription fee available on all VR headsets. And then for the healthcare systems, we're looking to charge a $5,000 price point per headset per year. And this is for physician well-being as well as patient well-being use cases. As a team, we are uniquely qualified to solve this challenge. My background is in product and business development, and I've been practicing meditation for over 10 years. My co-founder, Nick, is an expert marketer and had a previous digital health exit. We've also assembled folks from Oculus as well as Sony Entertainment to really kind of craft an immersive product that resonates with our audience. And then we also have Everett Crossland, who used to be the chief commercialization officer of Applied VR, joining our team as well. So far, we're making great progress. We're already in partnerships with 4 major health systems in the US and Canada, as mentioned. We're struck up some really cool, interesting technology partnerships with hardware manufacturers, been through medical device accelerators, and then been featured in the media as well. The time for VR mental well-being is now. The number of AR and VR headset shipments are going up in the millions. And after gaming, fitness and well-being are the #1 use case that people buy VR headsets for. And the benefit we have is the use case of VR in reducing stress, anxiety, and depression has already been proven by countless studies out there. So far, we've raised close to $800,000. We're looking to raise a $2 million round to get through our product development, get through our clinical studies, and then launch our product officially. Thank you for your time and open to questions.
Clinical studies need to prove? Is it more for market validation, or are there any regulatory clinical studies still ready to do?
Yeah, so from a clinical standpoint, we still have to prove reduction in anxiety and distress during their hospitalization. In fact, the first use case we're focused on are patients undergoing stem cell transplant. They spend up to 30 days in the hospital room with no access to the outside world. So as you can imagine, distress levels can be extremely high, and hospitals want to lower their anxiety and stress, but they just can't keep up with the demand. So they want to have more immersive, engaging digital health solutions. So those are the clinical outcomes we're measuring. But from an economic standpoint, we're also measuring length of stay reduced for hospitalized patients.
Of the 2 markets, where do you think your greatest and earliest growth is going to come from? Direct consumer side or the hospital side?
That's a good question. So we recently actually launched a consumer version. And honestly, the reason we did that is because hospitals tend to be very slow to work with and just a lot of red tape to get through. So we decided that, by launching a consumer version of our app, we'll be able to generate a lot of good data out of that, just real world evidence. And we can use that to drive a lot of product decisions on the B2B side. But we anticipate that I think healthcare partnerships will definitely pan out in the long term.
Yeah, are you seeing, I guess, both on the hospital and consumer side, like the hospitals already have devices that they're, VR headsets, or are they buying this specifically for using Rocket VR? And kind of similar question on the consumer side as well.
Yeah, for the hospital side, our beachhead market are, as I mentioned, stem cell transplant the population, and then we can expand for other transplant cases as well. So lung transplant, kidney transplant, heart transplant. We envision that these VR headsets will come standard as part of a transplant room. So our vision is to have eventually a VR headset available in any and all transplant rooms across all hospitals in the country. So that's our play with healthcare. A lot of hospitals do have VR headsets of their own already. The VA actually is the #1 user of virtual reality devices, and we're also engaged with them on a project. But we could potentially load up our software on their devices as well. But in an ideal case, we'd love to just have everything packaged within our device.
So traditional therapies with especially kids, teenagers, young adults, CBT, meditation, all the things you're talking about, mindfulness, all of them, they're really hard to access for a million different reasons for all of those kids. This seems like two things. One is, so those are completely inaccessible for some kids, like the flipped brain, that concept. So this seems like it could, forget about getting to a hospital in order to access this. This could make all of those treatments more accessible. I mean, everyone knows about the mental health epidemic that's happening right now, which of course then leads to how could this help with the suicide epidemic that's happening. So this seems like it could help on a couple of different fronts. Accessibility, and it might make it's just far easier. And I think you'd have parents falling over themselves if one child used this to a success. Anything that's better than everything that's out there right now. And I don't know how this would be reimbursed by insurance, but psych reimbursement rates are garbage. So
exactly.
This, I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. So that's kind of, we made a decision to not pursue the virtual clinic model and leverage existing CPT codes because the price points for those tend to be, quite low. So that's why we're just working directly with hospitals. And eventually, once we have a little bit of a data set built out for payers, our hope is that we'll get these in more and more homes, not just hospitals.
That's great.
Yeah.
I have a question. So regarding some traditional apps like Headspace and Calm, those are less engaging, less immersive, but it's easier to produce content. For this, how do you plan for it to be long-term treatment and produce, is the problem of scale? How do you continue to produce content for long-term users?
Yeah, one word answer, AI. We've been using a lot of it to generate content. In fact, what used to take us a couple of months to actually put together can now be put together in a couple of weeks, which is fantastic. We love having these sort of efficiencies when it comes to software development and creating these virtual environments. And as far as the actual content goes, we're actually building a CMS system behind the scenes. So we can literally launch and configure content depending on the use case, almost like building Lego blocks. So eventually, we haven't exposed this to the outside users yet, but eventually therapists might be able to leverage their own knowledge and build out their own therapeutics, just like Lego blocks using our platform. Any other questions? I do have a demo if anybody wants to try it out. Awesome. Well, thank you.
All right, so I guess that was the last presentation, and thank you everyone for paying attention, asking great questions, and for engaging throughout. This has been a great time, and yeah, we appreciate you showing up on this evening.
Yeah, thank you to all of our great panelists, presenters, all the attendees that came out. We're gonna have our next event, we'll have more of a networking event over the summer and then another showcase the beginning of the fall as well. And yeah, would love to see everyone there. Some other, also share some other upcoming events and opportunities coming out, coming up as well. And yeah, if there's anything else we can support with on your ventures, feel free to reach out and let us know how we can help. I'm glad to have you all as part of our community.
Yeah, and lastly, just want to leave it off with a thank you to Kevin again, to Marianne, and to Tufts University for hosting us. And yeah, the last part, now you don't have to wander. Oh yes, please, Kevin.
Just one other quick thing I forgot. So at Tufts, we have a program, a graduate program, where we pair people who have STEM backgrounds with people who have great ideas out of research. So if you're looking for a way to accelerate the creation of your business plan, please chat. We're happy to bring in ideas. We've actually, as Michael knows, we've launched multiple companies across blood drug delivery systems, non-invasive bladder cancer tests, industrial wastewater treatment, all using technology launch. So if you've got an idea that you're looking for some help on, and you want to talk to some students who actually came through, they're currently working on engineered pancreatic cells for producing insulin for type 1 diabetes, you can get a taste of the program. So we would welcome any ideas. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And if you enjoyed networking before, now you have more things to discuss. So please go ahead. Thank you.
I saw your fundraising on I just wanted to say
What are you doing? Rock AI? Yeah, nice to meet you. Yeah, I am actually, yeah. Yeah, there's a track. Specialist here in Boston. Yeah. You guys go see Industrial Life Science? Series we're gonna get you to the next one. Breakdown. So my job I know. You guys ever released the memo and recording process? And I'll just
I met him. What's going on? Hey, yes, we got the world. I missed it. Something more. Money. I have to go because I booked Chris Hoffman. Yeah, well, the multi-monitor play for them. Try to focus. If you want me to stay awake, it's honest to me. Oh, world. So, that's I have a book play. I'm not going to do
lead to more because the eye is stretching out. So basically, and right now, if you're nearsighted, you have both entire eye.
That seemed to all right, fine. It's also okay.
Sorry, I'm gonna
Don't worry, I don't mind.
That's what I did.
No, that's actually true.